Hello YouTube world, my name is Nicholas Montez and you're watching my YouTube channel, The Teenage Movie Critic. And welcome back to my YouTube channel everybody. I'm so excited to have you all back here together again. And in today's video, we're going to be doing another video for a celebration of cinema. So you're getting 2 episodes this week. I meant to do this video yesterday, but once again, it's the weekend, I'm kind of lazy, so, you know. But today we're doing a much more interesting video and talking about probably one of my most personal favorite films, with Captain America Civil War. It was its anniversary yesterday. Fun fact, there was also Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness's 1-year anniversary yesterday, so that's fun. But I'm very excited to talk about this movie. If you guys don't know, this is a heavily film that's part of my life, but not just part of my life, but it's also a big part of what made this channel come to life. I'll talk about that, or I'll talk about it right here. As it's the movie that really started this channel, and it's the one that really started my love for Marvel. Where, if you guys know my story, in summer of 2016, or even before that, I was not exactly a fan of Marvel. I hated it. Like I said, I was a stupid kid back then, didn't really know what it was. Even though I saw the first movies I saw in theaters was the very first Avengers, and I grew up watching Spider-Man and Hulk, but that's because of my sister. I didn't love Marvel. But then I saw the airport sequence come up on YouTube for this movie, and I'm like, that looks cool. And then then the next year we get Spider-Man Homecoming, and then I think also Guardians 2. Then 2018 happens, and a bunch of great superhero blockbusters come out with like Black Panther, Infinity War, Ant-Man the Wasp, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Aquaman. Then the next year after that, Shazam, Captain Marvel, Endgame, Far From Home, and then 2020 didn't really have any. And then really 2021 was really where my channel started to kick in, and I started to like fall in love with movies. So really 2018 was the one that was really the year where I started to fall in love with movies. Not just Marvel. 2016 was the year, 2018 was really the year where I fell in love with Marvel and movies. So Civil War really started all that. And so it really has a special place in my heart. But let's just talk about the movie and what makes it so great besides just the importance of everything else. Let's just talk about it. Alright, so I think the story of this movie is very well told. Much like with Infinity War and Endgame, especially Infinity War, where they were able to tell this story of like, how do you mix in all these different characters from the Avengers to the Guardians of the Galaxy with Black Panther, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man? It's because everything was established. With this movie, it's like you're not doing an Avengers film. Because obviously when the Avengers film would make sense. But you're doing a third movie in the Captain America films. So why exactly do the Avengers come in here? And how exactly does that all make sense? Is because they're human superheroes. So, and the Avengers, like, it makes sense because the Avengers cross all these different borders to protect people, but at the same time they're also leaving. They don't realize the stuff that they're actually doing, and they think they're just the heroes. That they kind of just fight for themselves. And it's an interesting story because all these different characters, they've done it, and it makes sense in the light of the MCU story. It makes sense in light of the Captain America storyline. But at the same time, the movie feels like a Captain America film. just sprinkled in with the Avengers storyline in it, and it works. Now, obviously, if this was just this is kind of like Avengers 2.0, but at the same time, for the story that they told with this movie, it was excellent. And it's also thinking like, Civil War is not technically a Captain America story. It's an Avengers story, technically. Or, I think so, yeah. And a lot of people are wondering, like, how are they going to do Secret Wars when technically Secret Wars isn't technically an Avengers story? We'll have to wait out and see. I don't really... I just want to mention that because I'm like, Secret Wars isn't technically an Avengers comic. It's technically just a separate story. But yeah, I think the way they handled this story of the Civil War storyline and the way it does that is like, you have the Avengers, you have Captain... It fits into the MCU, but at the same time fitting into the Captain America trilogy, continuing these characters, but makes sense in the story that they're telling. And really has a lot of great stuff in it. As these characters are with Captain America in the franchise, and I just think it's great. As he's been part of the Avengers, it's just great. The story of this movie is fantastic. But even more importantly, the way that this whole story plays out, and that these different characters have different motivations for each other, and well, not different motivations, but they have their own little things where it's all down because of the thoughts of Iron Man and Captain America. Where 7 years later, we're still debating who is right and who's wrong. But the thing is, they're both right in certain ways and they're both wrong in certain ways, and that's awesome. Where you kind of understand both of their views. Where Tony Stark is just like, he believes that the it has this question in the movie where, should the Avengers be governed by the government, and they should be the government should be in charge of whether and have the Avengers tell them where they need to go to fight, or do the Avengers just stay and they have to fight the battles that they need to? Like Captain America was saying in the movie, like, what if they send us somewhere that we need to go? What if there's somewhere we need to go and they don't let us go? We may not be perfect, but the safest hands are still our own. And he was like, there's people with agendas, and those agendas change. And then with Tony Stark, makes it even more sense, as we're no boundarless, we're no better than the bad guys. If we just go out there fighting people, we're risking everybody. And at the end of the day, we're not really saving people. So what's going to be the whole point if we're just going to be going out killing people and we're not really actually saving anyone? Makes sense. But another great part about this movie is the way they balanced all the characters. In light of all the other Avengers with Black Widow and Hawkeye. Obviously, Hulk and Thor are missing because they're fighting in arena in Sakaar. But they really balanced all of the characters, and like I said, it fits into the Captain America series as it continues the events of, it has the death of Peggy Carter, it brings in the Winter Soldier storyline, and of course it also has the reveal that Bucky killed Tony Stark's parents. So it even makes the stakes even more personal. Another great thing about this movie is just the way that the action was done. All of the action in this movie is practically great, and even through that, the Russo brothers also found a great way to just continue that political thriller aspect of this film that was used in Winter Soldier, but this is the better version of it. So for me, I just really liked that about the movie. And then of course, just the way that they were able to do such a great story, include all these other different characters, introduce 2 new characters, and then set up movies for them, and they were great. Look, I have a separate category for that because I want to talk more about them, but the story in the way that it was told, I thought was great, and I've never really seen any other MCU film do this, but they need to do stuff like this in the future. So that's the story on that one. That was great. So for me, I think this is the Captain America score. I couldn't really think of anything else I loved other than the score in this movie, because I wanted to do at least 5 things, and the score is pretty great. It's, I think it's from, of course, you got the iconic Captain America score that was heard in Winter Soldier. You got the Winter Soldier little theme there. All the scores in this movie are great. The little soundtracks in the movie, pretty cool. When you meet Spider-Man and Queens, pretty cool. But yeah, the score it's great. Not much to talk about it because it's just a score, really. I don't know why I include scores, but certain movie scores are fantastic. But yeah, the score is good. Now, Baron Zemo is probably one of my favorite Marvel villains, and the first reason is he's a different type of villain who has this motivation of back in Age of Ultron, and it's like he's kind of a result as to why the Avengers were put on the Sokovia Accords. That you think them killing someone in Lagos was the first time they actually killed someone. It wasn't. They killed people in the Battle of New York. They killed people in Washington, D.C. They killed people in the Battle of Sokovia. But one of the other lives that was risked, that turned someone mad for revenge, was Baron Zemo's family. And what I love about him is that he's not just this villain that he's trying to beat up the Avengers and he's trying to kill them like any other guy would, because, as he says in the movie, I knew I can't kill them. More powerful men than me have tried. But if I try to get them to kill each other, that results in that. And so I thought that was kind of smart in the way that he did that. There are kind of, when you do think about the way that he did it, though, it's like, how did he know that Steve didn't tell Tony about the death of his parents? I mean, obviously, if you really think about it, I feel like he did know that he didn't tell him, because obviously if he did know, they wouldn't be together. But at the same time, there's still a risk that he probably would have known, and they probably got over it many years later. But yeah. But if you really think about it, he was the one that split the Avengers apart, but he is also kind of the guy that pushed the dominoes. You take out that scene, and they just do it. He's really just the one that, he's not really the one that pushed the Avengers apart. He's just the one that knocked the dominoes down to make everything come in place. I guess that's smart, but that's what makes him such a great villain. And I thought that was a great way to do the villain. I wish we could have like gotten I wish we could have gotten the better version of him, where he's actually fighting Captain America. But then again, it would have just been a formulaic villain problem again. But that's what makes him such a great villain, is he's not just this guy that's out coming and attacking characters. No, he's going to he's going to pin them against each other, and that's smart. So I like his smartness. All right, now let's get on to the new characters that were introduced. Alright, so obviously one of my favorite things about this movie is that while it tells such a great story, and it fits into the Captain America universe, while at the same time fitting inside the MCU of the world of the Avengers, it has some great action sequences. It also does a great job. It also does introducing 2 new characters and setting up movies for them. So that's what we're talking about here. And they introduced 2 new characters in this movie with the introduction to Black Panther and Spider-Man with Chadwick Boseman and Tom Holland. And I thought these 2 characters were great additions. In particular, in Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther and T'Challa, I thought that he played this character to perfection. As soon as you see him and the accent that he uses to play the character, it's amazing. It's great. And when his father dies, and T'Challa shows, and he says these lines after his father died and he's sitting on that bench, he's like, in my culture, death is not the end. It's more of a stepping off point. Don't bother, Miss Romanoff. I will kill him myself. Powerful acting, powerful stuff. And then when you see him as the Black Panther character in the suit, he's a force of nature. He's a force to be reckoned with. And I would say that this is probably the best version of Black Panther that we've ever seen in the MCU. Not saying that his other appearances in, like, the first Black Panther, Infinity War, and Endgame are bad, but you didn't feel that sort of performance and the threatness of that character in those other movies. He just kind of felt like he was just a side character. But in this movie, he, like, all the flippy kick stuff he's doing, beating the crap out of Winter Soldier, and also fighting all the Avengers, that's awesome. And I even love the arc in the end where, you know, Vengeance where he sees what Zemo's doing and he pinned the Avengers to get apart. He pins the Avengers to kill each other. He realizes vengeance has consumed you. It's consuming them. I'm done letting it consume me. And they really did a great arc with the character that I really loved. And then we get Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Obviously, you know, we had two other renditions of Spider-Man before with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, which I thought were pretty great, especially Tobey Maguire. And so you get this one, and you can tell that this is a Spider-Man, a Peter Parker that's in high school still. So it's not like the other ones that are graduating high school and about to head off to college. No, this one, he's still in high school and has some learning to do. And I really like the way Tom Holland played him in the film. As soon as he's introduced, he has this great chemistry with Tony Stark that I just absolutely loved. That, like, especially like you have Tony Stark just making fun of all of the Spider-Man stuff. Like, how can you see in these? And, like, they do this stuff of where it's like, the reason why is, like, he has those goggles on his mask for his homemade suit. And I love the difference that, like, we're introduced to him, he doesn't do his origin story, but he's still using a homemade suit. He never actually made an iconic, classic Spider-Man suit yet, and he's still using a homemade one. And I think that's kind of a cool way to do the story of this character, as, you know, and they even find ways of, like, why does he use goggles? Like, just to be silly? No. He uses it because his eyes have gotten a lot better, so it helps him, like, see better. So I thought that was kind of smart. But then we get into that line where he's like, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't. And then the bad things happen. They happen because of you. And at first I was like, is he talking down to Tony Stark? Is he like saying something to him? I'm like, what? But then when you watch it a couple more times, like especially many years later, and you watch No Way Home, you understand what that means. As it's basically communicating the death of Uncle Ben. That he had these powers, he didn't stop the robber, and his uncle got killed. And it was his fault. And that's the thing with Spider-Man. But even getting into the third act of, you know, the airport sequence, there's a lot of fun stuff in there. I mean, as soon as I saw him in that trailer for Civil War, I was like, what is Spider-Man doing with Captain America's shield? I'm like, is this a multiverse film where Spider-Man has Captain America's shield? Like, what is this? And then you realize, no, he just stole Captain America's shield. And then just all the little fights. He fights with Captain America for a little bit. He fights with Falcon and Bucky for a little bit. It's all awesome. And then even when he's helping War Machine and Iron Man fighting Giant Man, all that is fantastic. But even then, the fact that, like, Tony Stark says, you're done. If you don't go, I'm gonna call Aunt May. You're done. And it sets up a great character. But even beyond that, I also forgot to mention the airport sequence, amazing. Forgot to mention that in the story part of this video. But the other thing that I think the impact that these two characters had is they like, not only do they introduce such great characters, these two great characters, but they also set up these two movie series with Black Panther and Spider-Man movies that have become amazing franchises that when all these movies were coming out, we were excited and they were awesome. Spider-Man, like a year later after Civil War came out, Spider-Man Homecoming came out. Almost everybody loved it. Then a year later, Black Panther came out. And everybody loved that film because of the cultural aspect of that, even though they didn't do the stuff that they did with Black Panther in this movie. Then you get a year later, Spider-Man Far From Home comes out. But not only that, in Infinity War you get the death of Black Panther and Spider-Man in those films, which are two beloved characters. And then you get 2020, which obviously we didn't get any Marvel movies coming out, though we did get the death of Chadwick Boseman, R.I.P. Then we get 2021, Spider-Man No Way Home comes out. Then a year later, Wakanda Forever. And then we don't really know when the next Wakanda series or Spider-Man film is coming out. But, and obviously, you know, we've always been excited for new Spider-Man movies. I mean, we're getting we're getting across the Spider-Verse next month. You really think? Like, come on. But it's like the fact that they create these characters that are amazing. We all loved them, and from that, we now love their movies. And it was all done to this film because of their introductions, because we fell in love with them in this film, because of the way they were introduced. We loved their movies. And honestly, I would say, besides the Avengers and the worlds of those characters, Black Panther, Spider-Man, and I think Guardians of the Galaxy are probably my favorite franchises, my favorite worlds in the MCU, where we get to see the world of Wakanda, we get to see the world of New York and Spider-Man, and we get to see the world of space with these wacky characters. And that's interesting to me. The world of Marvel is something great. Alright, so as we end this video, we gotta answer the big question. Team Cap or Team Iron Man for me? And I'm actually gonna spoil it here. I'm Team Cap. And really, it's not just because this is his movie. It's because the way that he is described as his story is very interesting, where he can't, after what happened in Winter Soldier, he can't trust the government. Because he saw, and one of the most interesting factors of Winter Soldier is that he's in a world where not everything is now changed. The world isn't exactly the same it was back in the 1940s. Obviously the world has changed massively with technology and, you know, music and everything. But in the way that it's changed incredibly is there's not really a spirit forward of who's good and who's bad. It's kind of mixed. And Cap saw that, and he's like, I can't fall for that again. But at the certain sense, he also doesn't want to. But by the same time, he also knows what's right for the country. He'll do anything to save the world, even if it is breaking the law. So I thought that was like, I agree with Cap right there. I'm like, if I'm being honest, I'd probably do the same thing. If I was him, I would do the same thing. If I had obviously I wouldn't right now, but if I was part of if I had a super soldier serum and a vibranium shield, I would totally do that. Most definitely. But with Tony Stark, you also kind of agree with him. It's like, if we just go out there and we fight people just to save the world, but we're still killing people, then what's the point of even fighting people? We should be governed, so we should be controlled, so that way we could actually save people and actually be the real heroes. But then you go back to Cap, and yeah. So easily, I'm Team Cap on this one. And that's pretty much everything I want to talk about this movie. Once again, you know, this is a personal favorite film of mine. This is my third favorite MCU film of all time. Definitely my top 10 favorite films of all time. Means a special place in my heart. Love this movie so much. I want to talk about this movie with someone. Not just with you guys. But I really want to talk about this movie with someone and, like, I want them to understand exactly how I feel, because this movie has a huge impact with me. So that's my celebration of cinema review for Captain America: Civil War. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All my social media stuff is in the about section over there, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.